Welcome everyone to the second CMX Connect for our Milwaukee chapter. My name is Angela Damiani. I am CEO and partner at a firm called NEWaukee, but I'm also our chapter lead for here in Milwaukee. I will tell you, I attended a session with directors and chapter leads from across the world yesterday, and I was really proud and excited to be able to sit. We're only like a month old as a chapter, and this is like already our second reunion. So, really excited to have you be here. What is our agenda for today? We are going to be talking about AI powered communities and how we strengthen connection through innovation. Real briefly, a little bit more about NEWaukee. We're an engagement agency that works with organizations to build new and interesting transformational experiences. And we do that through the power of community. Really excited to be able to have this conversation with you today, joined by my amazing partner, VP of Marketing. Wyatt, you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone. Excited for this conversation.
I'm excited to have it with you too, Wyatt, because I feel like I'm a bit of a Luddite and I need to lean into your ability to sort of change always in all ways. And so you guys are going to have lots and lots of fun. But I thought maybe before we get into the AI stuff, I was like very curious by like the diversity of people who've signed on today. And I thought maybe it would be helpful to sort of frame this conversation in the way that I sort of approach what community means, knowing that you all come from different backgrounds. And actually, while I'm going through this definition, I'm wondering if folks can put in the chat, like, why did you join this? What community do you currently lead? So the way I like to think about community, what makes a community is that it's a space that allows members to have shared interests, goals, ideas. There's a high level of engagement and understanding that has two-way communication. So it's not, in a membership list that's, just being spammed, but rather members can interact with it. And there can be discussions, events, activities, initiatives that are led by the members of the community from the bottom up rather than always just sort of like top down. And then I thought it would be sort of helpful to talk about like what a community isn't from my perspective, so like a database with names and emails and phone numbers, like that's just a list. It's not a community. It's not like a newsletter marketing, you know what I mean? Like platform that allows for just sort of like one-way spamming to happen. And if it's, there is like a centralized small group at the top where members can't really contribute or interact, don't think it's a community. I saw a tweet the other day from David Spanks, who said, oftentimes people go into building communities for marketing purposes, but they don't realize that like by building a community, you're actually building a whole new business, right? Like it's a whole new entity that's living and breathing and interactive and always evolving. And I thought actually just starting with that premise would help us get into this conversation around AI, which, I'm hoping today we can talk about how to move out of a place of fear and anxiety when we talk about AI and emphasize how it can be leveraged to really build the communities that you're each building, interested in growing, etc. And I'll just say that I tend to have a little bit of fear and anxiety when it comes to this, and I know not everyone else does. Like I'm sure we have plenty of early adopters in this room, but for those that are not, maybe Wyatt, you want to just sort of like back up and give us like the bigger picture about like why is everyone talking about AI in this moment?
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of zoom out and see why AI has become such a big topic of conversation. So, several advancements have made AI tools much higher performing and much more accessible to the average user. So that's like breakthroughs in machine learning algorithms, better hardware, much larger sets of higher quality data, and there's a ton of investment in this space which all came together to create the AI boom that's happening now. So really it's about the tools being more, accessible to everyday people to use.
That makes sense. And I mean, to be honest with you, of all of the like technological advancements we've seen, the like rapid change in the last 7 or 8 months since OpenAI sort of like came on the scene, and then lots of things have like proliferated since then. It's been a little bit like amazing. You know what I mean? How much change, how many new tools there are. And we're going to go through some of those in just a minute. Common fears that AI, sometimes present, that AI is going to eliminate jobs and increase unemployment. You know what I mean? Especially like as it relates to any of the parts of our job in managing communities that have to do with content creation, automation. Obviously, like thoughts around that can be a little bit um, I don't know, sticky, right? That AI will compromise data, IP, or that there'll be like a loss of our privacy, and that AI, will be used for nefarious purposes. You know what I mean? Or I mean, I think we've all seen the sort of like sci-fi extension of this that like somehow it'll become sentient and uncontrollable. Um, all of these are legitimate, right? Like even the like muckety mucks as it relates to, you know, AI have sort of like flagged some of these things, but I think it's important for us to like address those like fears head on and realize that like while AI will change and eliminate certain jobs, it'll also create new ones, right? This is the same as computer and the internet. And even if you think like all the way back to like antiquated forms of technology, like back in the day, there was not an alarm clock. And when the Industrial Revolution happened and people had to be on time for manufacturing shifts, um, it actually, the alarm clock actually eliminated a whole class of jobs called window knockers. People were paid to go tap on your window to wake you up so that you would get to a place on time, right? And so while, you know what I mean, we no longer have that because our alarm clock, there are other jobs, things that we can't yet see in terms of jobs of the future that we will create as a consequence of this. The other thing that I think people are afraid of is that AI mimics human input, especially with this revolution around like word-based prompts. But it does not possess consciousness, right? Like the real world scenarios like require a holistic human approach. You know, humans understand morality and decision making, and there is a stopgap to errors that will continue to sort of persist in AI, right? And I think really for any of us that work in sort of like white collar information worker jobs, where AI, I think, allows all of us to kind of potentially be excited is that this allows us to go from doing to deciding, right? Like rather than just sort of like churning out output, like this allows us to use our creative expression in a new way. And while using AI doesn't necessarily equate to like license to act unethically, lawmakers and companies are working actively to address privacy concerns via policy. And it's important to be very critical about how you're using AI and whether or not it could be unethical. I think we're all in the driver's seat of that. Like we're all charting unknown territory. And as leaders for the communities that we are helping to cultivate and grow, like I think we just need to use our same, best practices as it relates to ethical behavior and know that we're in control of how we leverage tools like this. All right, couple of initial hot takes on good uses versus bad uses. So, what are ways in which you might consider using AI to bolster your communities right now? What does it do really well? Oh my word, brainstorming and ideation. Like, I don't know about you, but there have definitely been days when you've been like meetinged out, way overstimulated. You need to like come up with new program titles or new ways to potentially like deploy content, and like you're looking at that blank page and it feels like the most daunting awful task. Like using AI to help you start, right? Throw something on the page so that you can kind of get those creative wheels turning. Awesome use. Um, Drafting or building out a framework for things. I mean, stuff that like would normally take forever in terms of like building out a run of show or some of the like sort of, you know, background documents that we each use to sort of stay organized. That is amazing. And to that point, I've been finding like where in my day as someone who manages multiple communities am I like getting stuck in the like rote, mundane, repetitive tasks? Like, how can I have an AI solution like take that off my plate? Particularly when it comes to like data entry or analysis, creating decks or spreadsheets. Like, oh my word, I can't believe how much of my like pre AI life that I squandered my like energetic resources. And that's really what I think about. Like, and we only have so much energy to expend every day. How much of that was going into these things that like no longer take, 20 minutes or 2 hours to complete because it can be done instantaneously. Um, what is it not great at? I'm going to put like comma yet, because this is going to continue to change. We need to be prepared for that. But so far, bad uses. Human interactions and engagement, right? Like you probably still need some form of customer service that like allows people to actually talk to a person. Um, Fact checking to a point. So for instance, like ChatGPT is set up only on a database that goes through 2021. So, like, if you're looking for amazing new restaurants or something like that in your community, like it's, if things have closed since 2021, that, it's not going to be able to pull on that data. Thing is the AIs can do something called hallucinating, which is where they just like make up an answer that feels right. And so, double checking what is sort of like outputted, particularly as it relates to like long form or fact based information, is still required, right? You still need a human eye on these things. Key decision making, and then obviously ensuring the brand authenticity, the brand voice and tone. Like, I think we all know that the more authentic we can be as it relates to how we're managing our communities, like the more compelling they are, the better it is to sort of engage with members, et cetera. And so AI still does not have the ability to do any of that for us.
So now I'm actually going to walk through some specific AI tools and their use cases for community. We've broken down the AI use cases into three categories. So AI for creativity, AI for production, and AI for utility. So I'll be starting with creativity. I've been kind of interested in the art of map making after a recent book that I read. So for the purposes of this presentation, let's create a community for cartographers and for map enthusiasts. So first, I'm going to need a name for my community. And let's say I'm kind of brainstormed out. So I asked ChatGPT to provide creative new names for my new community. Some of these are really awful, but I actually like Cartographer's Haven, so let's go with that one. And now I'm curious, like what types of benefits would encourage my people to join my community? I feel like I'm brainstormed out. What are some ideas for benefits I could provide or exclusive content that I could provide to the community? So I asked ChatGPT to provide some ideas, and I like this idea of an interactive map library and this monthly cartography challenge and cartographer spotlights. I think those are nice. So I feel like I could take those, copy them over to a doc, and kind of build out my plan for those a little more. Now, I need to start inviting people to join my community, but I feel like and I don't know about any of you, like I get writer's block when I see a blank document, like a blank Google Doc is kind of scary. So let's ask ChatGPT to just kind of build out a draft or like a framework for inviting people to join. This is so interesting, but when I did this, I didn't ask it to, but it sort of took on an old-timey brand voice.
Oh, that's
Uh,
funny.
some of this reads a little too formal for me, but I could just copy it over to a Google Doc and edit it. It's a good starting point at least. It provides some of the like ideas of what should be in a welcome message. Um, if this were too long or too short, I could ask ChatGPT to expand on it. But for now, I think this is a good starting point to at least just get my creative juices flowing. So now my community is up and running, but I need to, you know, produce some, produce a plan. How am I going to onboard them? I feel like there's, a method, as you all know, with community to getting people engaged. And so here I just asked ChatGPT to draft a 90-day onboarding plan to engage these new members of my virtual community. And it drafted this little plan here. And obviously, I'm not going to use all of these, but it's a nice starting point to think, okay, maybe these are some touch points that I could use along my way. Um, as you all know, like we're being creative all the time with our communities. And so it's important to just kind of continue to get those creative juices flowing. Now, once people join, I feel like I need some ways to bring my community together. So let's think about some ideas, some event ideas that people would like. I like this idea of an annual cartography conference. That could be cool. But I'll probably need sponsors to make that happen. A conference can be expensive to put on, and I'll need a way to explain what this conference is to potential speakers. So I'm going to jump over to Tome, and I'm going to ask Tome to create a presentation about an annual cartography conference hosted by a community of map enthusiasts that features networking and national speakers. Nice. It's created a bunch of content and some images. Um, it looks really polished. Now, this is a good starting point that I can then take and just edit as I go along. But now I need to look for speakers for this conference. So I'm really curious who would be good to speak at my conference. Let me ask ChatGPT to share a list of 10 nationally renowned modern cartographers and or GIS professionals that I could reach out to speak. So it's given a list of some speakers. Now I'm going to have to take each of these and then go and do additional research on them. Now, this doesn't always work. In some cases, you might want to go to Google's AI platform, Bard, if you're wanting to do some of this research as well. But looking at this list, I can take a look, go into Google, see more about their biography. ChatGPT, as we said, their database only goes until like 2021. So we might be missing some people from like 20, who are more popular in the last couple of years. But it's a good starting point, and it's a good way to get going rather than having to just put into Google modern cartographers and or GIS professionals.
I love all of this because I feel like it's one thing to come up with like the annual conference, but the what that it can be really like time consuming. And even if this is just a jumping off point, right? Like, I don't know who this Cynthia Brewer is. Maybe that isn't someone we actually want to, feature. But I think it's so great. And to be honest with you, because I end up being the one that has to put together like the what is it overview or the sponsorship speaker requests, like the fact that that could be done like automatically and in a way that looks so beautiful, right? Like really, really polished. I feel like that's my favorite part about this is like I'm not a graphic designer. I can work around a Canva presentation or a Google Slides, but like it never looks like as like a great as this could look. Just and I think it's like a great way to sort of like augment my skills.
So now we're going to move into production. So let's say your community is up and running, but now you need to produce content for them. So here are some AI tools that can help with content production, and in particular, some of the more like graphic and video and audio production that we've seen is really helpful. I love, I use Photoshop all the time. I love their new Photoshop beta generative fill tool. So let's say that I'm going to use Mighty Networks as my community platform, and I want to make a welcome post, and I want to include a photo with my post. I like this stock image of a globe, but let's add a map that's laid out on the table. So using Photoshop's generative fill, I can just easily add one in there with a few clicks. This is also great, like if, for say, you have a meetup with your community and you take a photo all together, but someone photo bombs in the background, you could easily, edit them out so that you have a nice photo to post on your platform. And now I'm going to create some designed graphics and branding in Canva for my community. And I want to use this photo of a person holding a map, but I want to put it on a different background. So I'm just going to go over to remove.bg, which is a free tool, and it'll get rid of it for me with one click.
This is huge. Like, I feel like I would I have like anxiety from my like early days, you know what I mean, in Photoshop and like having to click, 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 click with the lasso. And then suddenly, like, you know what I mean? You click the wrong way and you have to start all over. Like, I feel like this
Oh,
needed
yeah.
to exist 20 years ago.
And now let's say that I'm going to create webinars or other videos for this community. Riverside.fm is a great way to easily get transcripts, which is important for creating captions that will keep your content accessible. I know Angela and I both have, I think, uh, use cases of this in terms of like um, when I was in college, one of my jobs I remember spending 2 weeks transcribing long form interviews, and that was my entire job for like 2 weeks. So that is a job that is no longer exists. That wouldn't exist
Why
today.
so
But
Karen's asked, like, do you think that graphic designers may be in danger of going the way of the window knocker? And how do you think those creators fit into this AI integrated world? Like, you were classically trained as a graphic designer. I get the sense that you feel inspired by these tools, but is there some part of you that's worried that, like, I don't know, this will take things away?
it's possible, but I also think that for people who are graphic designers or photographers or for videographers, I think there's also excitement around the fact that this is removing some of the like yucky parts of our jobs that we don't like to do.
Mhm.
Um, I think there is a lot of, as we go back to the policy concerns conversation, I think there is a lot of work that needs to be done around IP and making sure that like I think I don't know if it was Midjourney or some of the other tools where like you can clearly see that it's taking other graphic design work and creating new graphic design work with that's like not attributed.
Mhm.
And so there's a lot of work in terms of policy that will need to happen to make sure that there's less like, you know, I guess stealing of copyright.
Yeah.
Um, but I think there's always going to be a need for like creative new ideas, and I just think that this is going to push people into even more like creative spaces. I think,
Agreed.
Canva was created, and I think a lot of us use Canva, and I think people thought the same thing about Canva. Like Canva is going to get rid of graphic designers. Like anybody can be a graphic designer. But what we learned is that there are a lot of people who do that really, really badly. Like there are a lot of people who use Canva, but like still use Comic Sans and like have a million photos all over and it's like badly edited. So I think there's always going to be a space for classically trained like graphic designers. It's just going to be like the nature of the job. And I will say it might get more competitive. That might be a thing. Like there might be fewer graphic designers needed and therefore more competitive. Um, but I don't think it'll eliminate it completely.
Can you repeat what Riverside is for as a tool?
Yeah, absolutely. So for Riverside, it's like, let's say you create a webinar or a video. Riverside FM is a way that you can just enter your video and it'll easily generate a transcript, um,
That's cool.
so that you can get like captions. Um, and now, if you're hosting like a lot of webinars or virtual events and you have a lot of videos, it's nice to be able to cut that content up and share it with your community platform as well as on other social networks. Um, I'm not an editor and I don't have a lot of time to edit, so I can just jump over to Opus Clip and it'll generate social assets that you can download. It'll automatically zoom in on whoever was speaking. Um, so just saves a lot of time. And I've seen, I don't know if it's this one or another AI tool, but a lot of video editors who edit podcasts can easily create like the videos for podcasts because it'll just cut whoever is speaking at the time,
Oh, that's cool.
which is really nice. Whew. All right. So we've done a lot of creative work, but now let's talk about some of the like general manual admin work that you have to do. Let's say that after I hosted the conference, I got a bunch of survey data and survey comments back. So I'm going to ask ChatGPT to put it in a table, and I want to know what the general theme of each comment was. So I'll take these in, and it'll say whether the feedback was related to the venue, the food, the content, or the cost. Um, I love using ChatGPT for stuff like data analysis and data entry. You could also do something like if you had a lot more quantitative data from your survey, you could input that into ChatGPT and say like, what are some charts or some graphs that would be interesting to show, and you would generate graphs or charts for you just using the tool. I also find that a lot of what I do with ChatGPT is just like taking data that's not usable and formatting it into a way that's usable.
Hmm.
So if you have like a CSV file that has a ton of spaces, you could put that into ChatGPT and say, eliminate all of the like spaces for me.
Oh, I love
Or
this. Like all that kind of like putsy, like
mhm,
spreadsheet stuff. I love that.
lots of putsy spreadsheet stuff can be cleaned up with this. Um, when if people want to, if you want people to get connected one on one for like deeper relationship building, you can use Rivet. So I'll just send out an assessment for my community to take, and based on their responses, Rivet will use its algorithm to connect community members based on their likelihood of friendship, and it'll automatically just introduce them via email along with tips to start the conversation. So what might have been me like manually looking at my community members and seeing who do I think would be great to like introduce, this will just do it automatically, which is really nice.
Oh, I love this too because I feel like most people join communities hoping to network, right? But then it's like dependent on the community manager having time for this, which given all you just showed with like the content and like creativity that's needed, like that can sort of like fall by the wayside, as well as like kind of serendipitous moments, like you both have to be at an event, but you know what I mean? Why do you have to physically be at an event to be connected across a network? I love this.
And so let's say like my community is crushing it. I have a lot of meetings. I've got meetings with sponsors. I've got meetings with potential speakers, and I don't want to take notes during them. I don't want to be like, I want to be present in the meeting. I don't want to be like taking notes in a different document. So I'm going to use fireflies.ai to record and transcribe all of my meetings for me. And then at the end of the call, it'll just generate a meeting summary and notes with action items that I can review after the call.
This is great, especially if you're like collaborating with a group of people, right? Like if you have a team, or I mean, for some of us, you have groups of volunteers that are participating in something like this, keeping everyone like on the same page.
I see Teresa put in the chat that read.ai is also good for it. I've also seen, I think, Otter AI. So there's a lot of tools out there that do this. And finally, I don't know about all of you, but sometimes when you get so many new meetings, you realize that your days are becoming like broken up and you don't have enough in uninterrupted work time. So I'm going to use Clockwise to share which meetings on my schedule I'm like flexible on, and then it'll automatically search for better times for moving them around and block off focus times for me so that I can have more uninterrupted work time, focus time, so that my day isn't just kind of staccatoed with meetings.
Oh my God, I definitely need this one. We missed this in the questions or in the chat, Wyatt. Martha asked, what do you think about recommendations for attribution? Like, should we be putting that this is AI generated content on presentations, websites, copy? Like, do we have to say this out loud when we're using tools like this to help us?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think definitely you have to be very careful with anything related to imagery for sure.
Hmm.
I think for content, my goal would always be to like edit it to the point that it's no longer like Chat GPT's work.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that's my main goal. It's like I take a same approach as I would to like a Creative Commons sort of thing where it's like you need it needs to be a certain percentage your own work. Um, so I would never take something from ChatGPT and just use it as my own. I would always make sure to edit it to a point where it becomes my own work. I think you have to be very, very careful with anything related to like graphics or photos. Like if you were to say use Midjourney or Canva's AI to generate a like an image for you, um, just knowing that they sometimes will take data from other artists, like I feel like that's a little weird for me. But in terms of just like editing photos or editing, removing backgrounds from different photos, I think that is something that you wouldn't need to attribute. But again, I would say that in general, AI should always be kind of like that first draft when you're talking about creativity, and a way to get started, but not something that you use as an end product.
That makes sense. Okay, well, we're a little bit over, but I'd love to hear like what are people doing? How are you using it? Other ways that we, you know what I mean, should be aware.
I love seeing all of the chat. I mean, I think this is the whole reason why we're having this conversation. There are a lot of like still unknowns um, surrounded by AI, and that's why I think it's important for all of us to be really critical about our use.
Yeah, like I said, I think we're like all making it up as we go, right? Um, and so, use your best discretion as it relates to that. Um, yeah, we can send out the slide deck and the recording to, I think I can send it to anyone that RSVP'd for this. So I can do that. But then, yes, you should also be able to subscribe through that to the chapter. For anyone that came to the last session, our hope is to have an IRL version of a CMX Connect in Milwaukee sometime next month. So I'll be sending out information related to that. But if you have other ideas or things you're seeing as best practices. We would love to hear from you. This absolutely should be a two-way street. And so feel free to reach out, DM me either on LinkedIn and or via CMX's platform so that we can figure out how we might continue to grow together. I feel like this is really important stuff, even beyond the AI conversation. And I'd love to have this be a shared learning community for us to keep going and growing together. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful Tuesday. Thanks, Wyatt.
Thanks, everyone. Great conversation.
Perfect. Bye.